Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Shimon. I'm Chief Analyst for AI Platforms at Omdia, and it is my pleasure to welcome today Mary Mashori, who is a Product Director for Watson X AI at IBM. Miriam, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Bradley.
Now, everyone, Marian and I are going to talk a little bit about governance and responsible AI. And as a bit of a preamble, just so to set us a bit of a stage for all of us that are listening in. And by the way, Mariam and I thank you for joining us today. I want to say responsible AI is something very near and dear to my heart as an analyst, because we're always trying to understand all of the different ramifications of deploying AI in the enterprise and all of the concerns that are wrapped up in that. And if you look at responsible AI, you can see it's actually a collection of concerns that spans the entire life cycle of creating an AI outcome. And so when we look at it, we see things like security, privacy, repeatability, transparency, whether it can be governed, is it free of bias, et cetera. And it's a long list. And we see those concerns reflected in the research that we conduct. Very recently, actually, we ran a study of about 1,500 enterprise IT practitioners, and we asked them all what they thought the biggest threats were, the top three threats they saw for AI in the enterprise. And of course, in the top three was concerns over workforce displacement, but the other two concerns were security at the top and then privacy underneath workforce displacement. And when we asked them what they thought it might look like in 18 months, the privacy bumped up to number two. So these are all concerns with AI. And I want to ask you, if you don't mind, Miriam, why are these so important to enterprise practitioners, and why are they something that needs special attention when you're working with AI and perhaps generative AI in particular?
What you said is very aligned with what we've been observing in the market over the past few months. Last year was the year of excitement for the market to just explore with generative AI. Lots of pilots and explorations. But the majority of the market at this point has moved from that initial exploration to pilots, and some have moved to production and scale. And as they go through this journey, they soon realize the path to success in terms of ensuring a responsible implementation of this technology is actually not as straightforward, as you mentioned. Obviously, security and privacy are some of the concerns, but also when you look into the challenges for enterprises when it comes to incorporating foundation models and generative AI into their solutions, covers a range of different dimensions. One is the challenges that are stemmed from the models itself in terms of hallucinations, lack of explainability, unsupervised learning of these models, right? The second set of challenges are, as you mentioned, transparency in terms of visibility into the training of these models. We all know that for Gen AI, the AI lifecycle doesn't start with data. It starts with a pre-trained model. So it's important to have visibility into how those models are trained and where they are coming from, and have input on the data engineering pipeline, for example. Like, did they filter the hate, abuse, and profanity data? Did they filter the copyrighted information? Like, what was the model exposed to? So that's the second challenge. The third challenge is the regulations that are picking up around this topic, especially in some special geographics or highly regulated industries. So if you are operating in those climates, it's going to be much harder to get to productions with Gen AI. And last but not least is the privacy and security issues. Where does the data go? Is the model continue training on the data that you're exposing it to? How are you protecting all those data that is going in and out from a user perspective? So that's definitely in line with what we've been seeing in the market too.
Yeah, it's fascinating what you mentioned about security in particular. I think we all have been over the last couple of years thinking about generative AI security as in, well, are you sending your data to OpenAI or to Anthropic, and are they deleting it at the end of the day? really or not? And it's more than that. It's like fundamental security of the model itself. And it's something that I had a hard time wrapping my head around, but I think I've got now, which is that you have to think of a model, especially one that's been fine-tuned or one that you're feeding contextual knowledge with in prompt learning or RAG or whatever, that it's a representation of your corporate knowledge, of the corporate data in some cases, and you have to secure it like you would secure a database. It's
Exactly.
not straightforward.
Related to security, it's also a series of other non-functional requirements that you need to track for what's happening to the model in addition to security. I'll give you an example. For these models, even if you do your best on the pre-trained models, you grab a trusted model that you have full visibility into how the model is trained, and you get the model provider to stand behind it. Then you grab it. Through the input, you can potentially nudge the model to create an appropriate output in production. So because of that, we got automatically document the lineage of who touched the model at what point and what is causing certain behavior of the model. So the complexity that it adds at the AI governance layer is another concern in addition to security or privacy or other platform considerations about adoption.
Yeah, there are so many of those small areas, dark corners, if you will, that need to be illuminated in trying to create a governable, responsible AI solution, aren't there? If I were to ask you to say to somebody who's got some AI skills in the enterprise, they're using AI, they're exploring generative AI, what would be the most critical factors for both the model and the tooling that they should look for from a partner like IBM if they're trying to see those nooks and corners, trying to shine a light into all of those dark places?
I like the framing that you use, the model and the tooling, because these are really the two primary elements that we need to really investigate and look into when it comes to examining trusting of Gen AI. Starting with the model side, the pre-trained models, what makes trust into pre-training models? Step number one is basically a list of question marks to go through and try to investigate the answer. Number one, do I have visibility into the description of the data that the model was exposed to? Basically, do I know how the model was trained? The second one is, do I have visibility and transparency into the data engineering pipeline? What kind of filtering went into that? Like, what percentage of the data was dropped because it was labeled as toxic? What percentage of the data was dropped because it was duplicated data? Was there any bias detection mitigation happening on the distribution of the data before the model was exposed to? So these are not just the data sources itself. This is the data engineering pipeline. The third question to ask is, if the model provider provides a client protection for the use of this model. And if so, to what extent and how? And that pretty much covers the trust aspects of the pre-trained models. So either you as a customer have full visibility into the pipeline and training and you can stand behind it, or the model provider is providing that. But that's just the realm of pre-trained model. Then we just talked about behavior, changing the behavior of the model through nudging the model to create inappropriate behavior in production. For that one, the tooling comes into the place. We are going to need to ensure two sets of toolings are in place. One, we call them guardrails. It's filtering out the input that goes to the model and filtering out the output that goes to the model. And there is a large range of detectors that can be activated for this, like detectors for jailbreak, detectors for toxic information, like HAP filters, hate abuse and profanities, detectors for PII, personal information. So there's a long range of these detectors that, depending on the performance that you need or your use case, you can activate or deactivate. And the same thing is applicable to the output of the model. Before the output is exposed to your end users, you want to do some processing to filter out those behaviors. So that's the guardrails. The second piece to tooling is the lineage. Automatically documenting what happened to the model. Every single interaction matters, right? Because you want to be able to trace it back, not only to the pre-training data, but also to the prompting and the behavior changes that happen to the model. So I would say for both of those, you want to have one access to trusted partner that provides not only the models, but the tooling, trusted tooling, be it indemnification and client protection for you. And two, really do the due diligence in terms of asking those questions, understanding what are the requirements for the target use case and how you're going to mitigate those.
Yeah, those are all extremely important, but the tooling one I feel like is one that doesn't get enough, discussion in the marketplace. And what you said about being able to have the ability to look at a complex system and to see all of the assets, whether those are the pre-training data or the prompts or the semantic search results and the ranking of those, let's say, is itself an asset. To be able to see those, not just within the context of a given transaction, but over time for that model and that solution as an experiment that is a living entity as you build it in enterprise is critical. But we don't hear enough about it. I know we're running short on time, but I want to ask you a question, if you don't mind getting philosophical with me on this. But given what you're just talking about, and given how generative AI, so just talking about not predictive, but generative AI, is a very stochastic process, and it is one that relies upon probabilities and is therefore not very deterministic. And we all in IT love things that are deterministic. Do you think that with the right model and tooling and support of a good partner, that companies can actually control and make sure that the model is behaving in adherence to their own policies and external regulations, et cetera? Or is it always going to be this sort of epicycles that keep building on epicycles to try to get closer and closer to that state of knowing?
I like these philosophical questions because we can talk about that for hours and hours. And I think it comes down to the definition of control. So I'll give you an example. For Gen AI, the most popular use case is content-grounded question and answering. So when a question is asked to the model, instead of having the model to answer, we provide a number of documents and we ask the model to go retrieve related information to that and come ground the answer to those and provide citation. And that's a way to avoid hallucination and sort of, we can't claim that this is reasoning, but basically just nudging the model to produce the outcome that we want. Obviously, it's not guaranteed. There's not 100% that hallucination is not going to happen, but that's the way to have some sort of control on the output. The other example that I like to highlight is agents, agentic workflows that we keep hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Emerging. So with those ones, the LLM can take actions, but also the promise of agents is not just an LLM that takes action. It's an intelligent entity with planning and reasoning capabilities that can make sound actions. Obviously, in today's picture, it's just taking actions, but the direction that the research is moving forward is trying to maybe work on making the planning stack mature to sort of stimulate that reasoning capabilities for the LLM. Mm-hmm. And one example is breaking down a very complex input to a series of smaller steps that can be answered and solved one by one. So these are like the small tricks that is sort of nudging the LLM to expose and exhibit some sort of reasoning capabilities that we can argue if it's considered reasoning or not, but it's definitely not the traditional reasoning algorithms and frameworks that we've been following so far.
But perhaps, that is how we're able to get closer to having a level of trust in the outputs from our solutions, our Gen AI solutions that align with our corporate requirements and guidelines. And if I were to say, like, okay, so I know we're out of time, but very quickly, is that the future for having trustworthy, responsible AI? Is it that ability to have reasoning and planning and other higher level functioning to sort of make sure that it's not just blindly outputting stuff that we hope is right, but instead making sure through a committee of models, let's say, what are your thoughts? Like, what is the future of responsible AI is the real question here.
Well, we absolutely want to make sure that we are shaping this future together. And one aspect of that, shaping it together, is to make sure that the right regulations and the right guidance and the right guidelines are in place to make sure the technology is, one, used on the right use cases, and two, it's delivering what we need moving forward. Like, if the problem is lack of hallucination, we want to encourage the research community, the development community, to understand those gaps and go tackle those together. So it's like sort of all of us together influencing the market moving forward with a focus on what are the gaps today that we have to understand and collectively work together to resolve.
I love that. It's very much in line with the broader marketplace and the role of, for example, open source and that community that is so generous with its time and always striving towards solving those problems and moving the marketplace forward. I think we're in a good position to make what you just described happen. At least I hope so. Anyway. Miriam, thank you so much for spending the time with me today, and everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, this is Brad Shimon and signing off. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.